Well, my great-grandfather was a director of Hardy's from 1884. He was a treasurer, and he knew the quality of these grapes on this vineyard from there because they'd been going there. And he bought the vineyard in 1912, a bit over 100 years ago, and built the winery in 1927. We still use all the old style fermentation with submerged cap ferments, still basket press everything. It's still very old traditional style. And I've actually turned the vineyard back into old fashioned style as well, where we haven't used fertiliser for 20 years. We don't use irrigation most years, and most of the vineyard never, but sometimes occasionally in some places we might need to. No cultivation, no tilling of the soil, there's no herbicide. So it's very organic, and actually I call it minimal input. It's almost no input, and this is the way we get the flavour of the soil. Really long, spicy, gritty, lovely, vibrant mineral style wines that age for a long, long time.
You mentioned you make 60 labels. That's 60 labels. I mean, that's a lot of labels. How do you keep track of all of those wines?
Yeah, it means you need to do a fair bit of drinking. I suppose it sort of happened gradually. We didn't start with that many, obviously, and the single vineyard wines that we do now that are all $100 a bottle. There's 15 or so of them for the Dead Arm, components of the Dead Arm single vineyard Shiraz wines. And I do all them relatively quickly in a few days. I just look at them and make the blend. It's 8 barrels that I keep separate from the Dead Arm, and the rest of the barrels go in to make the Dead Arm. So they're all pretty easy to do. You think, surely they start to taste the same, but no, you get really focused on exactly the differences and nuances. So the barrels, in the 15 barrel lots, so one fermenter is 5-ton fermenter, and you've got 15 barrels. Then you're just looking for the barrels that are the best, brightest, and best oak integration, and there's not a fatness or clumsiness in there. The region is actually quite diverse. There are 19 districts in McLaren Vale that have been separated off now, and there are 40 different geologies in McLaren Vale, and there's a lot of different altitudes and different climates. Even though the region is like basically 12 miles by about 10 miles in size, in a triangle size, it's still very different, having the sea and the hills right alongside. So, and the rainfall next to the sea is 15 inches a year, and next to the hills it's 30 inches a year. So you've got very different things going on. So there's a lot of diversity. You can grow varieties in some parts, and maybe wouldn't work so well in other parts. So there's a lot of experimenting still to do in McLaren Vale. Yeah, Australia boomed internationally very fast, through the 90s and into the 2000s, and there was probably a bit of growing pains, I think, happened where a lot of vineyards popped up everywhere. People got into the industry that had never been in it. They were pushing things a bit too far sometimes, partly because of some journalists and whatever wanting the big styles. But I think what I'm seeing now is the next wave of interest in wines that are like our style, where they're not too overripe, they're not over oaked, they're really long and have great length and great ageability, because that's really what measures great wine. And they smell and taste of the soil and where they're from. They speak the place where they're from, and because many of the wines in Australia are as good as any wine in the rest of the world, all over Europe. But you just need to get those styles that have the ageability and the minerality.